So thank you guys this morning for having us here. We really do consider it such a true honor to be with you guys this morning, especially on a Saturday morning. We know that time is very precious to people, so we really appreciate it. We've been attending Covenant Church since the summer of 2016, shortly after we moved to the area. And I always tell people that the church sign out in the parking lot really is what drew us in. I was like, I like the sign. They seem like a good church, which is funny. You judge people off a sign. But I will say, though, that what made us stay was the people interaction there and God using those people that we interacted with at the church to confirm that that's where he wanted us to plant ourselves and grow. So thank you guys for being here with us this morning.
Yeah. So a little snapshot of Angela and I is we actually started working at Chick-fil-A as teenagers. It wasn't something where we were raised with a ton of money and we just had this opportunity laid out for us. It's appropriate that this song was being sung, and the entire time I'm thinking of the valleys that were in between where we started and where we are now, and how God, man, we sang his praises through the valley, and he was faithful, and he's brought us to an awesome mountaintop, and we're really blessed where we're at. Shortly after, or right before we got married, Angela started working at the corporate office in 2009, and a few years later, I started running company-owned stores across the country, and we were blessed with our first franchise in Abilene, Texas. Does anybody know where Abilene, Texas is? Good. Outside of Texas, nobody knows where Abilene is. I didn't know where Abilene was until they're like, hey, you want a store here? And so we were there for a couple years, but our dream was the standalone store in the Metroplex in a community where we could do life and add value and be blessed to be a part of. And that recently came to fruition with the Crossroads campus in 2006, and we've been there for a little over a year and a half. And so in total, I've been with Chick-fil-A for 17 years. And I know you're thinking, this guy doesn't look 17 years old. And so I'm going to fill you in on the secret fountain of youth. Chicken. Eat more chicken.
So we did want to share with you guys a little bit just about our family. We have a 4-year-old son, Arden, and we have 2 twin girls, Catherine and Evelyn, who just turned 1 at the end of January. So we're pretty busy. So the funny thing is, because our girls like to get their hands into everything, we thought smash cakes would be a perfect idea for their birthday. So this was the effect of smash cakes. So you can see lots of crying. But just as our culture is, this was the picture we posted to social media. So obviously not reality. So now our heart today is obviously for you guys to eat more chicken. But our other part of our heart is really to teach you guys what we do within the realms of service at Chick-fil-A. As you guys already know, and as you mentioned, that Chick-fil-A is already kind of known across, at least the United States for its emphasis on service. And the neat thing I think about that is, even though we're closed one day every single week, we do more in sales than any other quick service restaurant whenever you compare store within our chain to a store in another person's chain. And I think that that's because of how we honor God in that decision. But I also think it's because of the way we treat people. And so I feel like that's just a reflection of where people choose to spend their time and money. And so with that, what we wanted to do first was kind of talk about some of the chain-wide principles to where across all Chick-fil-A's, this is how we view service.
So I want to start with 2 disclaimers. The first one is I'm not a public speaker. If I was to show you my resume, it would have one skill: slinging chicken. And so please give us some grace as we try to share our heart. And the other disclaimer is I'm still a student of this kind of stuff. I love speaking and talking about being a servant leader, being selfless, but I'm still learning every single day about that. And I know everybody in this room could teach us a lot about what it means to serve and to honor God in what we do. And so I just wanted to throw those couple disclaimers out there before I get really passionate and sharing this stuff, and just so you know my heart. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is it all starts with leadership. Any excellent organization usually is reflected by their leadership. And Chick-fil-A is very passionate about servant leadership. In fact, if you go to the corporate office, right there at the entrance is that statue. And does anybody know what that statue is depicting? Yeah, Jesus washing the feet of Peter. And so if our Lord and Savior will wash the feet of his disciples, how much more should we, when we're in a leadership role, serve those that we've been given the privilege to lead? And so I think it's just really neat that Chick-fil-A has that right when you enter their corporate office. And I can't think of a lot of companies in America that are as big as Chick-fil-A is that have that kind of thing in there. And so when we talk about servant leadership, it's important first to say, what is leadership? My favorite definition of leadership is influence. John Maxwell would say that. And so with that definition, everybody's a leader. Everybody has influence, whether you're a parent with your kids and you're influencing them to make wise decisions, or you're just a friend who has influence in the choices that person's gonna make. Anytime you affect what somebody thinks, what they say, what they do, even what they believe, you're being a leader. And so we like to challenge our team to not just think about positional leadership, not just wait for the title, but to try to have a positive influence wherever they're at, to try to lead. And it can just be in the mood. It could just be the life that you bring to an environment and the joy of the Lord that you bring that leads that environment in a positive direction. And so our recipe for leadership is being a servant leader. Along with that, something that I think is neat on a corporate level is this idea of creative fellowship. If you go to Barnes & Noble, you'll see 1,000 books on leadership, how to lead well, how to lead organizations, how to lead projects, how to lead yourself. And I think it's really cool that Chick-fil-A coined the term creative fellowship because there wasn't a lot of books on how to follow well. And so Jimmy Collins, our former president, wrote this book, and he broke down creative fellowship into 4 points. The first one's teachable, second one's willing, next one's transparent, and the last is properly positioned. And so what that means is if you can kind of think about it in inverse. If you're trying to lead somebody and they're not teachable, they kind of already know everything, and they don't just have an opinion on one thing in the organization, they have like opinions about everything in the organization. Or when you're trying to teach them something, they're listening to reply versus listening to understand. And so we want to have a heart that's very teachable. We want to really understand the why before we forward our opinions. We also want to be willing, wherever we're at. You may have a passion for speaking, for teaching, for leading, but if you're asked to direct traffic, is that your willing heart to do that? Transparent. It's really hard to lead somebody that's holding half-truths, that's a yes man, that won't let you in on how they really feel, what they're really thinking, what they really want. And so part of following well is just being transparent. And the last part is properly positioned. And I don't think anybody did this better than Jimmy Collins, who wrote this book. He went from being the point leader of a multi-million-dollar business that was his to being the right-hand man of Truett Cathy in a multi-billion-dollar business. And he learned that sometimes your calling may be to be number 2 or be number 3 or be number 50. And if that's what God has called you to do, sometimes you can achieve more and be a part of something bigger if you'll just be willing to be properly positioned. So we talked a little bit about Chick-fil-A's bigger company culture. I wanted to share a little bit about our individual restaurant culture. Again, we opened in October of 2016, so we're very new. We're still molding as a culture and still developing. But as our North Star, we have our mission statement, which is to love on people and grow the business. This is the why behind everything we do before we talk about how many chicken sandwiches we're gonna make or how many cars we're gonna get through drive-through or how many guests we're gonna serve. We wanna be loving on people, and that doesn't necessarily mean warm, touchy-feely. Sometimes that's just actions. I'm gonna grab some water. So love on people, not just love people. Show them your heart through your actions. And then the second part of that is grow the business. We all know the story of the talents, in which even if you're offered one talent, God expects you to make more out of that. And so we want to honor, we don't want to just clock in, do our job, leave, and have nothing to show for it. We really want to make each day, even if you're just working a register or stocking fries or whatever, we want to try to grow the business. We want to try to leave the environment better than what we inherited it. And Angela likes the phrase, hard work means hard work. And so we want to add both those elements. We want our full heart engaged, and we want to roll up our sleeves and do some hard work. What does that look like when it's running on all cylinders? Our vision statement is to be the warmest store in North Dallas. We really think that when we are loving on people and growing the business each and every day, that you'll walk in and the first word you'll say is, man, it's warm, welcoming, inviting. And so that's really the culture that we're trying to craft in our Chick-fil-A restaurant.
And so with that, we wanted to kind of talk through our business strategy, and what that is really is to create raving fans. We believe that if we, as a Chick-fil-A, create raving fans, not only will we have a healthy business, but we'll have a thriving business. And so you guys may ask, well, what is a raving fan? So we define raving fans as people that meet 3 criteria. They're people that come more often to our Chick-fil-A. This could be multiple times a week or even multiple times a day. Is anyone guilty of going to Chick-fil-A multiple times a day? That's totally okay.
Totally fine. In fact, I recommend it.
You're like, we'll just look at your bank account and just see how much is Chick-fil-A. Pay full price. And what we mean by this is not that we don't like people who use coupons, but sometimes you only go somewhere if you have a coupon. So we want to be a place to where even if you didn't have a coupon, you would still want to come visit us and come dine with us. And then lastly, a raving fan is someone that tells us and others about Chick-fil-A. So by telling us, it's always an act of encouragement for us. We get to hear what we're doing well, but also they give us ideas on how we can improve for the future, and they give us feedback. And then by telling others about their experience at Chick-fil-A, I like to call that free advertising, because it's advertising that we don't have to do anything for it, and people trust it, because it's not a commercial telling you why you should go to Chick-fil-A. It's people that you trust telling you why you should go to Chick-fil-A. And so with that, we do that, create raving fans, through 3 different pillars. So the first is execute operational excellence. And this means operationally, we need to be excellent every time you come into our restaurant. And that just means meeting your expectations. So guests have certain expectations on the taste of their food. Whenever you come into Chick-fil-A, you expect your waffle fries to taste a certain way. You expect the restaurant to be clean, the restrooms to be clean. You expect it to be fast. That's why you went to Chick-fil-A. You don't have time maybe to have a nice long meal. You need something that you can be in and out fairly quickly. And then you also have an expectation on the service. You expect Chick-fil-A people to be friendly. So first and foremost, we want to make sure operationally that we do it with excellence. And then secondly, what we have is deliver second mile service. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But with second mile service, this is figuring out how can we go above and beyond the expectation. So once we've met the expectation, how can we take it to the next level? And then lastly, it's activate emotional connections. And this is really ensuring that no matter what part of the restaurant you're thinking of, it has a positive emotion that comes out of you. And so I always like to use the example of Disney. So whenever you guys think of the word Disney, what's the first emotion that comes to your mind? Yeah, funny, happy, like positive. So Disney does an excellent job in creating these emotional connections. And the thing that they do that we want to copy on a restaurant environment is that every part of Disney, they work really hard to make sure it's a positive emotion. Their commercials, their theme parks, even waiting in line, they try to make waiting in line a fun experience. They now have the magic bands where your tickets aren't just a ticket anymore, it's a fun bracelet that you get to wear. Their hotel resorts aren't just a hotel, it's a fun experience in itself. And so we want to take that on a Chick-fil-A level and say, hey, whenever people think about our restrooms, is it a positive emotion? Whenever people think about our playgrounds, is it a positive emotion? Whenever people interact with our team members, is that a positive emotion? And so these are the 3 pillars that we really focus on to create these raving fans. So with that, that obviously plays into service. We have kind of 2 focuses whenever we talk about service, because service really affects everything else. And so we talk about with service relational versus transactional, and then we also talk about quality versus checklist. So relational versus transactional, we really teach our team, do you feel like a number or do you feel like a person whenever you come to eat with us? Do you feel like, hey, we're just getting through the line? Or do you feel like, hey, I feel like I had real interactions with people when I ate at Chick-fil-A? Neat in research was that we found that 67% of people do not return to a business because they felt like employees didn't care about them. And I thought that's just crazy, 67% due to not feeling like they were cared for. And just realizing that it doesn't take much to make someone feel cared for, so can we invest in that time in doing that? And then we talk about quality versus checklist. How many of you guys have kids? Raise your hands. Okay, so my perfect example I like to give on this is that if you tell your kids to clean your room, they come out and they say, Mom, Dad, it's cleaned. And then you go in for the inspection and you kind of see everything shoved under the bed, everything shoved in the closet, shoved in the dresser, and you're like, this isn't clean. And they're like, check, it is clean. You said to clean up everything. And so that's what we talk about with our team is that there's a quality mindset, but then there's a checklist mindset. And whenever we're interacting with the guests, we want to err on the quality side and not just on the check, I said hi, check, I repeated the order, check, check, check. So with that, though, we're not perfect. And so one thing I actually heard Pastor G share in a sermon that we kind of copied from him now is that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes practice.
So along the lines of the relational versus transactional mindset, one of my favorite quotes is people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. And so for me, in my business, one thing we don't do is suggestively sell. But that's not an excuse to kind of not be bold, not go out there. And so we'll sample, we'll inform the guests, we'll educate them on our offerings, but we don't make them feel like a transaction or a dollar sign to where every person that comes in hears the same line of, would you like to make your fries large today? It's like, what you saying about me? Well, you think I want large fries? We want to make sure that it's a relationship. And if it's appropriate, hey, they asked for a large drink. Did you want the fries large as well? Anything that feels like a relationship personalized to that interaction is kind of what we're aiming for. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about our recipe for service. And so just like we have a recipe for our fruit cups or anything else in the business, we have a recipe for service. In fact, I'm gonna let you in on some secret information. Chick-fil-A lemonade. I'm gonna tell you the recipe. It's 3 things. Can anybody guess? Lemon, sugar, and water. That is it. So you can go home and make our lemonade. You don't even have to come to our store anymore. No, please do. And so there's 2 components to our recipe for service. The first one we call the core 4. The second part we call second mile service. And Angela's gonna kind of break that down and explain a little bit more what those terms mean.
So now with the core 4, we have really 4 parts of it. And it's super easy because it's all action oriented. So the first part is create eye contact. Secondly, share a smile. We use the word share because if you start smiling, other people start smiling. So we say share it with them. Speak with enthusiasm, and then stay connected. And the stay connected part really just means like do something that allows you guys to have a connection. Maybe it's like looking at their uniform and maybe they're working at a hospital and you ask them a question about, hey, where do you work? Or hey, are you on lunch break? And using that thing to stay connected. So with that, with these 4, we have what we call the rule of first. And this is where I feel like seals the deal on the core 4. And the rule of first is that whenever we're doing these things, who goes first? Us as a team member or the guest? Who goes first? The team member. The team member needs to be the first one to create eye contact. The team member needs to be the first one to share a smile. The team member needs to be the first one to speak enthusiastically, and the team member needs to be the first one to stay connected. And so a lot of times, we wait for the guests to come in and we're like, I didn't say hi to them yet because they weren't looking at me. And it's like, well, look at them and go ahead and proactively greet them and say hi. And so we really emphasize this with our team to say the core four only works if we're doing it first and we're initiating it with that guest. So the second part of the recipe, like Shawn mentioned, is second mile service. And this is great because you guys obviously have probably heard this story in some shape or fashion, but the word second mile in our restaurant comes from the verse in Matthew 5:41, where Jesus said, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. And the historical background, which many of you are probably familiar with, was back when the Roman Empire existed, how Roman soldiers could have people carry their equipment with them for 1 mile by obligation. And then at the end of the 1 mile, the Roman soldier would take their equipment back and go on their way, and then whoever they carried it just went 1 mile, who knows, out of their way, and had to go back to wherever they were going and continue on with their day. And so something that Jesus said is hey, once you've met your obligation, figure out what you can do to surprise that Roman soldier. And if you think about it, carrying that equipment, especially someone who's not a soldier, that had to be pretty hard. I think they said it was even like 40 pounds, an estimate of like today's weight. So someone carrying 40 pounds of something for 1 mile is asking a lot of a person. And so Jesus saying, hey, once you've done that expectation, what can you do? Can you surprise that soldier by saying, you know what? I don't have to do this, but I'm going to carry it with you for another mile. And just imagining that impact on that soldier. And so we use that in our service to say we have certain expectations, but once we've done those expectations, can we do something to surprise the guests and delight them? And so we always tell team members to keep in mind 3 things. That it's got to be genuine. You guys all know you can spot fakeness a mile away, and it doesn't count. Proactive. So we copy the Nike slogan, just do it. We always joke about, there's this one example that sadly has happened to where you see a mom coming in and she's got kids and she's trying to put one in a high chair. She's trying to keep the other one from disappearing. And then team members on the front counter are like, someone should be helping her. Like, where is her husband? Where is her friend? And then we're like, no, you go out and help them. You leave the front counter, go out there and help that woman, or help, maybe sometimes the husbands need more help than the women because they're like, I've never done this before. And so, but what we teach our team is be proactive. Don't be a bystander. Don't be like, well, my position for the day is front counter. I'm supposed to only be right here in this square. We empower our team to make sure that you know, hey, this is your position, but step out of it to serve people. Don't be limited by your title for the day. And then we talk about being personal. And this is something that where our CEO, Dan Cathy, talked about following your warm-hearted impulses. And so the cool thing about service is that it's not an exact black and white definition. We tell people, hey, we're hiring you because we believe you have the ability to serve. And we trust that whenever you get an impulse to do something, follow it. You don't need to ask for permission. Like, we trust you. We're going to kind of give little guidelines on what works best in a restaurant environment, but we trust you to follow those warm-hearted impulses. So with that, we have a video. It's only a few minutes that we did want to show you guys, but this is a video we show every new team member on their first day on the job. So this is before they're even on the front counter or back in the kitchen, and we do this to say, hey, we talked about service, but now we want to show a video of why we focus so much on service with the guest. So pretty powerful, right? I feel like you kind of watch it and it makes you just rethink everything in your life. I feel like for us, the reason why we show this is to really focus on every life has a story. And sometimes whenever people come into Chick-fil-A, they may already be in a bad mood. They may be sad for some reason. They may be super excited for some reason. And we just realize that we have a chance during those brief interactions to have a positive influence on that person's life, and realizing that they come in with a story, and we just got to realize that no matter where they are in that story, we have a chance to positively influence it. And I feel like one thing this video did for me was there's several times, and this just shows you how human I am, but every time I board a plane, I get instantly annoyed because I feel like I start to feel so crowded by a bunch of people on the plane, and then I'm just like, oh, I can't stand people, which is great working at Chick-fil-A. And so, but all that to say, this video challenged me to say, you know what? Instead of seeing a plane full of people and crowdedness and everyone trying to get somewhere, I was like, what if I saw this airplane as a place full of stories? That instead of all these people, that this is a place full of all of these different stories. And how cool is that, that we're all in one area together with all of these different stories? I will also say this video has made me a lot more friendlier on the road, because anytime people cut me off, I'm like, oh, he's probably going to his wife. She's in the middle of childbirth. Or, hey, he's just trying to make his flight so that he can be home for the holidays. I pretty much give everyone the best benefit of a doubt. Just because I think about everyone has a story, I'm just going to give them the benefit of they have something going on, and I'm going to trust it. So with that, we showed this video, but we also want to talk about service in action. So we kind of said the theory of the core four and the theory of second mile service, but we want to give you guys really quickly just some practical examples of what it looks like in the restaurant. And so the first thing we like to talk about is impressions. So obviously you have two types of impressions. You have their first impression and the last impression. And what we focus on with our team is the first impression is the first memory someone will ever have of our restaurant. And a lot of times you remember that. You remember your first memory. And a lot of times that starts pulling into the parking lot. So we have our team park as far away as possible, so that way the guests get best spots, but then also the guest sees a team member walking in and they see that team member has parked as far out as possible. And so we think about that first impression, or as soon as they walk in, we try to make sure we give a public greeting whenever we can. When it's busy, you can't really hear much, but during the slower times and when you can hear, we want to greet every single person. And then the fond farewell. This is their last memory with you, and a lot of times this is the thing that they remember most whenever they're leaving, is what do you do whenever people are leaving for the day? So one thing we've really challenged our team, and we've actually seen a huge growth on, is anytime someone leaves, they may just not even be looking at the front counter. They're walking out with their family, but all of a sudden you hear from the front counter, have a great day. Thank you guys for coming in today. And all of a sudden the guest is like, oh, did they notice me? I guess they noticed me as I was leaving. And so we want to make sure that we do a warm welcome and a fond farewell with each guest.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about what that practically looks like in the dining room, because a lot of times this is when we have the opportunity to interact a little bit more. When it's through the drive-through, it's a little more transactional. But in the dining room, we have a chance to really build a relationship and have more of an influence. And so I like to start with the term, the art of service. And that stands for awareness, responsibility, and timeliness. So the first part of that is, what are you aware of? Do you see the high needs guests? Do you see how they're feeling? Do you see that the condiment bar needs to be restocked? And the good thing is you can grow in your awareness. You can really stretch. I remember when I was a new team member, I didn't notice any of those things. But over time, it's hard for me to walk in the door and not see a straw wrapper or not see somebody struggling to open the door. And then responsibility means when you see a need, you raise your hand. You say, here am I. Yeah, let me meet that need. Let me help that person. No bystander effect. You don't watch somebody struggle and go, maybe I should help them. And then the timeliness is that moment is usually pretty small. When you see somebody walking to a trash can with their tray and you can serve them by, hey, I got that for you. Y'all have a wonderful day. That's just a brief moment that you have the opportunity to communicate your heart. And that's the other part of this impressions thing, is that every time we get feedback from a customer about us doing a good job, it is never just, y'all have such great intentions. Y'all just have great hearts, and it stops there. It is usually some sort of story in which they got to see our heart, got to see our intentions through our actions, through our words. And so we like to challenge our team that nobody knows you care until you show them. In the business world, we have the saying, perception is reality. And that does not mean that everything people perceive is abstract reality, but it does mean that what people perceive as your heart, or what they perceive as what's important to you, is the reality of the narrative that in that person's mind. And so we want to make sure they're perceiving the right things about us as best as we possibly can, as much as we possibly can control that. And so it starts with things as small as language. This is really hard for a new 15-year-old team member to get their mind around, to think, all right, well, how I say things is really going to impact if people think that I care. But it does make a big difference. When you have a professional bent towards your language, it shows you care about your job and you take the honor of serving people seriously. And so I want to give an opportunity for somebody who is under the age of 16 to guess what phrase Chick-fil-A is most famous for when it comes to the language of hospitality. We got any kids in the audience? Anybody know what we say that everybody knows? My pleasure. I heard my pleasure. I think
it's that cute.
You get a Chick-fil-A branded fidget spinner. Oh my, your lucky day.
And that's just to help you for the rest of the time here, and that way you'll just sit here.
So yes, obviously my pleasure is what we're known for. Kathy actually heard that from a gentleman at the Ritz-Carlton and said, man, that sounds so nice. That concept behind those words, it's my pleasure to serve. Because you think about, you enter somebody's house and the mom offers you a drink or something like that, and you know she's just dying for you to say yes. To say no kind of lets some air out. And so that's what we want our heart to be, is when you enter our doors, you know it's our pleasure. We're happy. Please let us serve you. Some other phrases we're known for is, can I refresh your beverage? Dine in or carry out versus for here to go. May I clear your tray versus saying, can I grab that trash? And can I serve the next guest? Because we want to think of every customer as a guest in our own home. That whole fond farewell idea, it's like, would anybody enter your home and you not notice when they leave? We want to have that same mentality, that same heart that we notice when people come in, we notice when they leave. We're really honored to have guests in our home.
And so with that, another factor we like to talk about too is the mood meter. And the mood meter is a subjective scale on 1 to 10 where you kind of, in your mind, place where you feel like that person's mood is. 1 being like a really down mood, and 10 being you're super happy, super excited for the day. And so with that, we have a few pictures, and we show this to our team to help them think through, what does service look like for this particular scenario? And so in the first picture here, we have 2 guys that look like maybe they're on a lunch break. And so for them, you can see they look happy. They're definitely somewhere in the upper half. And so with these people, we kind of know, hey, they're in a happy mood. We're going to interact with them. We're going to check on their meal, maybe have a small conversation, because it looks like that's what they're wanting. With the smiling faces, they're laughing. With the next picture, we see a kid. And so we realize, hey, with kids, the way we interact with an adult is going to be completely different than the way we interact with kids. And so with kids, it's getting down on the eye-to-eye level. It's showing them that they're important by treating them as someone of value. And we even carry coloring pages in the store. We carry even sometimes little mini-moos if we know it's their birthday or a special event, we'll surprise them with. On the other hand, sometimes we have people that this lady here she is in a rush. She went to Chick-fil-A because it was a quick service restaurant and she needed to be in and out and on her way. And so for people in a rush, what is not service is being like, hi, how are you? Where are you going today? And you can just tell that they're freaking out because they're like, this person is taking up my time. So what we say is that if someone looks like they're in a rush, what is service to them is making sure we take their order quickly, we get their food quickly, we get them on their way, we make sure everything's in the bag. So that way for them, they walk in and out and they walk away saying, that was an excellent Chick-fil-A because they were fast and I needed fast. Now the last picture is sometimes you have people that they're coming to Chick-fil-A and you know that today is just not their day. They're not having a good day. And so in this case, what we always teach our team is that anytime you kind of place someone on the mood meter, you want to be about 2 levels above where they are. And so if someone's feeling like how this guy's feeling, we may not know the reason, but we don't want to come in and maybe he's at like a 3 or a 2 and we come in at like a 9 or a 10 and we're like, hi, how are you? I'm going to be overly excited and make you regret coming here today. And so what we say is that with someone at this level, what you want to do is still be kind, still be warm, but tone it down. And just realize that for that person, it's being quiet, it's being just very calm whenever you're talking to them and realizing that they may not want a lot of interaction, or maybe they do. You just got to feel it out along the way. And so we definitely tell our team to keep in mind the mood meter and place yourself about 2 levels above where you feel like that person is. And that way you still have that positive influence, but then you're never too much for them.
And so y'all aren't listening near quick enough, so we're going to breeze through this real fast. So this is a picture of our daughter, Catherine. She did not enjoy the Texas grass. But a lot of times we're human, we mess up. We have 1,500 people that come through our restaurants every single day. And so when things go wrong, we have a thing called the herd model to help us serve the guests the way that they want to be served when we mess up. And so it comes down to hearing, empathizing, apologizing, responding, and delighting. And I know that's a mouthful. But the first part is to hear, because a lot of times, all that guest wants to be is to feel like they can vent, they can get this off their chest, that they can share how much this inconvenienced them, and that we hear that, and then that we empathize with that we care, that we're in this business to make people's days a little bit better, and we just made it a little bit worse. And then we want to apologize, to own that, and respond, make it right, do whatever it takes. Sometimes it may be a refund. Hopefully it's just getting the order right, but then we want to delight. We want to go above and beyond. I'll give you an example. The other day we missed a chicken biscuit in a lady's meal and she didn't have time to come back to the restaurant. So I drove that chicken biscuit to her house, but in there I had 4 hash browns because I knew she had 4 kids. And that just really, it actually made her more of a raving fan of Chick-fil-A than if we hadn't screwed up. And so that's really what we want to do when we mess up, is own it, listen, make it right, and then share our heart by going above and beyond.
So with that, we wanted to conclude our time this morning by showing you guys a picture of our team. We have about 60 people that work for us here or there, depending on the time. And we have this vision, but we couldn't do it without our team. Our team are the people that every day, day in and day out, make it possible. We actually have Jeremiah, if you'll raise your hand, who works for us and also attends the Crossroads campus.
Ladies, he's single.
But all that to say, I feel like that this is not something that just Shawn and I do. We would not be where we are today. We would not have the impact that we have today without the team coming with us side by side. And so we thank you guys this morning for giving your time, for listening to us. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you guys again.
Thank you so much.